All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Have you ever actually stopped and thought about how an office behaves almost exactly like a human body? I mean, every day when we walk into work, we basically become a single cell in this massive, living, breathing organism. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to explore the corporate anatomy and how organizing your office perfectly mirrors some pretty complex biological functions. We are going to unpack the actual science of office structure so we can understand what makes a business survive, thrive, and really grow.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the blueprint of office organization, then what makes a system healthy. After that, we'll check out the structural skeleton of a company, the nervous system, which is all about decision-making, and finally, the muscle movement of delegation.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the blueprint. What exactly is office organization?
To set our baseline here, let's look at a classic definition from management scholars Kuntz and O'Donnell. They define organizing as the process of arranging and structuring organizational work, specifically office work, to accomplish a company's goals. Now, I know that sounds super academic, but it honestly holds the secret to effective management.
Let's break that dense quote down into plain English. At its core, a formal organization is just a deliberate coordination of people in the organization to combine their efforts for common causes. And I really want to highlight the word deliberate here. It is all about intentional integration. You aren't just throwing people into a room and crossing your fingers that the work magically gets done. You're thoughtfully structuring tasks, you're grouping similar activities together, and you're assigning authority to make sure all those diverse efforts are seamlessly woven together.
Moving right along to Section 2, a healthy system. Let's talk about the importance of office organization.
Why do we actually need all this structure? Well, think about it. If your respiratory and digestive systems aren't coordinated, your body's going to break down, right? A business is exactly the same. A well-organized office sets up clear authority, which immediately cuts down on workplace conflicts. It ensures a minimum duplication of effort, so you don't have two employees accidentally doing the exact same task. Ultimately, this optimum use of resources clears out the bottlenecks, opens up effective communication, and paves the way for a business to actually grow and efficiently delegate tasks.
Which brings us to Section 3, the skeleton. Let's look at the actual forms and types of organizations.
Just like animal skeletons adapt to their environments in nature, companies generally evolve into four main structural forms: line, functional, line and staff, and committee. Functional organization, just as a quick example, is where you group people entirely by their specific skills, like putting all the marketing folks in one single department. And remember, there's no single form that's inherently the best. It depends entirely on what the company uniquely needs.
Let's start with the absolute oldest and simplest form out there, the line organization. Picture this as a strict, vertical, unbroken scalar chain. Think of your traditional military chain of command. Authority flows straight downward from the top executive right to the subordinates, while the responsibility flows directly upward. Communication travels exactly along these defined lines. It is incredibly straightforward, super disciplined, but as companies get bigger, it can become quite rigid.
To solve the rigidity of that pure vertical chain, organizations evolved into the line and staff organization. This structure is all about integrating outside expertise. You still have your line managers executing the main commands, but now they are actively supported by staff. This could be personal staff, specialized staff like lawyers or chartered accountants, or general staff who provide vital, highly specialized advice to top management. This setup lets the command chain benefit from deep knowledge without messing up that downward flow of authority.
Finally, we have the committee organization. Instead of relying on a single chain of command or just a few specialized advisors, this structure literally pools diverse experts around a table to make common decisions. When a modern company runs into really complex, multifaceted problems, bringing experienced individuals together, kind of like a cross-functional task force, to exchange ideas and generate organizational policies is incredibly effective.
All right, Section 4, the nervous system. Centralization versus decentralization, or simply put, who makes the calls? This brings us to two completely opposing concepts regarding how decision-making power is distributed in our corporate anatomy. Centralization is the strict concentration of decision-making powers at the very top levels of management. The decisions are coming from the absolute top of the brain. Decentralization, on the flip side, is the diffusion of those decision-making powers down to the middle and lower levels. It basically represents the degree to which lower-level employees actually get a say in the decisions that drive the whole company.
So, by definition, centralization hoards authority at the very top, while decentralization disperses it out. And because of this, the communication flow is completely different between the two.
In a centralized office, communication is almost entirely vertical, top-down commands just telling people what to do. But in a decentralized office, because decision-making is shared, ideas and information can flow freely across all the different levels and departments.
Now, the pace of these two systems is fascinating. Centralization can actually be pretty slow because every single choice has to travel all the way up the chain of command for approval and then all the way back down. However, it is highly effective during emergencies when you need strict, uniform policies implemented instantly. But generally speaking, decentralization is absolutely vital for large, complex organizations so they can maintain agility and make fast decisions right at the point of action. Small organizations tend to suit centralization well, while big organizations really rely heavily on decentralization.
That leads us to our final section, Part 5, Muscle Movement, Delegation versus Decentralization.
It is incredibly easy to confuse delegation with decentralization, but they are fundamentally different animals. Delegation is just a process. It's a basic, absolutely necessary relationship between one boss and one employee to get a specific task done. Decentralization, however, is the outcome of widespread delegation. It's a discretionary choice made by top management that changes the structural relationship across entire departments. So, you can have delegation without decentralization, but decentralization simply isn't possible without delegation happening first.
Ultimately, it all comes down to who actually holds the reins. In delegation, the manager is still holding the strings. They're just getting some help with a task, and they can step in at any time to exercise control over their subordinates. But in decentralization, you are quite literally handing over the keys. Control is given entirely to the departmental heads, granting them true autonomy to exercise their own judgment without constant top-down micromanagement. To conclude our theoretical look at the corporate anatomy today, it is vital to remember this. Absolute centralization or absolute decentralization is neither practical nor feasible in any functioning office. A real healthy organization requires managers to seek a judicious blend of both. You need that strong central coordination, but you have to combine it with the flexibility of decentralized execution if you want to survive in an unpredictable business environment. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to turn all this theory into some immediate, practical reflection for you. Based on the flow of communication and decision-making that you experience every single day, where does your own workplace fall on that centralization spectrum? And more importantly, is that specific structure keeping your organizational body healthy? Really think about that the next time you step into the office. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.